I've opened a restaurant called Peace and Quiet. Kids' meals only $150. Today, I'm going to recap a 2013 action thriller film called Vendetta. The film kicks off with an aircraft descending onto the airstrip. We then find ourselves inside a car with the main character Jimmy Vickers, a special ops interrogation expert, who is caught up in listening to an old voicemail from a lady who has a familiar tone akin to his mother's, expressing her anticipation to see him soon and praying for his safe journey. As he ambles towards his residence, the signs of severe emotional strain are apparent on him. On reaching home, he tunes into another voice message from his companion Griff, who tries to soothe him while expressing empathy for his sorrow. The context suggests that a calamity has transpired and it has inflicted severe emotional pain on Jimmy. Subsequently, he finds himself in a pub, questioning the owners Debs and Terry for any insights related to the catastrophic event. Terry pleads ignorance, but Jimmy points out that Terry's home is just about 50 yards away from where Jimmy's parents reside, close enough to have heard any distress calls. Terry pleads with Jimmy to exit if his intentions were to stir trouble. However, Jimmy, overwhelmed with grief and anger, grabs Terry by his collar and engages in a scuffle with a bystander. Debs intervenes, requesting Terry to share any information he may have, compelling Terry to reveal about the night when he dialed the fire department after witnessing 4 gang members breaking into the house. He heard the scream of Jimmy's father, but decided to observe from a safe distance due to fear. As the events continue to unravel, we find Jimmy later inside the scorched garage at his parents' place, where it is speculated they were murdered. He looks around and stumbles upon an old photograph that brings back memories of his parents. The scene transitions to a few days earlier, when Jimmy's parents were still alive. Jimmy's mother is seen requesting his father, George, to trim the lawn in anticipation of Jimmy's arrival, desiring a tidy home. They both are eager for Jimmy's homecoming, and George commits to carrying out the task upon his return. In another location, we see 4 gang members engaged in illicit activities in their vehicle as they await their next target. The subsequent plan is discussed and reveals that their upcoming prey is someone who handles cash transportation. As a girl steps out of a building en route to the bank, she is identified by the criminals who then don their rabbit mask and initiate the chase. The girl is ultimately captured and removed from her car by the gang. While one of them searches for the cash inside the car, they are unable to locate it. At that moment, Jimmy's father, George, who happens to be passing by, pulls up at the scene. When the gang tries to shoo George away, one of them strikes him with a baseball bat. However, George manages to retaliate and inflicts a severe injury on the assailant. He then confronts the others and demands they leave. One of the gang members brandishes a knife at George in an attempt to intimidate him, but they scatter at the sound of a police siren in the distance. Shortly after the incident, law enforcement officers make their appearance. In his formal statement to the police, George clarifies his intent was only to stop the assailant, not to take his life. Inspector Holland jests that such a thought should have occurred prior to the baseball bat swing. However, George is subsequently taken into custody on suspected manslaughter charges. As the day progresses, the remaining trio of hoodlums pay a visit to their boss, Warren, informing him that the intended theft did not go according to plan. Warren, upon asking about his brother, is stunned to hear about his demise. In a fit of rage caused by the loss of his sibling, he instructs the goons not to show their faces until George's death is confirmed. After being released on bail, George finds his way home, unknowingly trailed by Warren and his accomplices. Upon his arrival, they knock at his front door. While 2 of them occupy the front door, another pair makes their way to the back of the house. They intimidate George's wife with threats of violence. George is cornered against a wall, a knife forced into his mouth, as the same thug who previously wielded the knife berates him for his heroic actions that day. The felons then bind the couple to chairs and douse them in petrol. The room is set alight by Warren, the screams of the terrified couple filling the air. Fast forwarding to the current day, Jimmy finds himself standing in the charred remnants of the same garage. Griff, who is also a law enforcement officer, informs him that a local resident had noticed a black BMW speeding away around 11 p.m. on that fateful night, but unfortunately, they failed to capture the license plate number. Griff suspects that the group George had the altercation with is behind his murder, but there is no tangible evidence to back his suspicion. Jimmy exits the garage with tears streaming down his face, asking Griff to provide him with the CCTV footage of the robbery. He visits his parents' graves to pay his respects the next day. In the church, his estranged wife Morgan appears. They were on the cusp of a divorce when this disaster struck. She accuses him of ignoring her 5 emails and failing to attend the funeral. Realizing that he is going through a challenging time, she consoles him, assuring him he doesn't have to face this alone, and invites him to visit her apartment sometime. The following day, Griff arranges a meeting with Jimmy, revealing that their investigation has traced a black BMV to Warren, the brother of the man who was accidentally killed by George. He then shows Jimmy the CCTV footage of the botched robbery. Later that night, someone rams into Warren's car as he exits the gym. As he steps out to confront the driver, he comes face to face with Jimmy, waiting in the car behind him. Jimmy, with his special ops training, quickly subdues Warren and knocks him unconscious. When Warren comes to, he is tied to the front seat of his car, with Jimmy pouring gasoline around the vehicle. Jimmy brings up the brutal murder of the couple from 2 weeks prior, which sends Warren into a rage as he insists that his actions were justified. Instead of showing remorse, Warren taunts Jimmy with a graphic account of how he mistreated Jimmy's mother that night. Struggling to keep his emotions in check, Jimmy strikes a deal with Warren, promising to set him free if he reveals the identities of his gang members. Once Warren provides the names, Jimmy casually lights up a cigarette. Subsequently, Jimmy pays a visit to Morgan's home. Due to a sustained stab wound, he is unable to maintain a lengthy conversation. Morgan senses something is off when he abruptly stands up. Spotting the blood on his clothes, she quickly brings him in and tends to his injury. Despite their impending divorce, the incident fosters a newfound closeness between the two, and Jimmy ends up spending the night at her place. The following day, news of Warren's death grabs the headlines, shedding light on his drug-peddling background and criminal history. Upon learning about the accident, one of the gang members, Rob, and his accomplice Leon rush to confront Warren's business partner, Caleb, suspecting him of the murder due to a previous disagreement over profit shares. They barge into his home to confront him, but Caleb appears genuinely clueless about their accusations. He refutes their allegations and, after being defended by his girlfriend, warns Rob and Leon to steer clear of his territory. Late at night, Griff drops by Jimmy's place, cautioning him against taking the law into his own hands. Jimmy, however, expresses his belief that the flawed structure of society will never effectively deter criminals who are wreaking havoc on nearly every family in town. He criticizes the police for merely recording statements, while the culprits openly mock them. The next day, Griff arrives at a crime scene where a shopkeeper has been killed during an armed robbery. When Chief Inspector Holland dismisses the robbery and its victims, insinuating that the shopkeeper shouldn't have fought back, Griff recognizes the failings of the law enforcement system. In response to Griff's protest that the shopkeeper was merely defending his livelihood, Holland advises him to calm down. Holland justifies his stance by suggesting that the victim's wife would file an insurance claim and receive a substantial payout, ensuring a happy outcome for all. Meanwhile, Jimmy continues his vendetta, focusing on the next gang member, Ryan. He abducts Ryan, ties him to a chair in a secluded location, and gags him. Fueled by his thirst for vengeance, Jimmy subjects Ryan to extreme forms of torture characteristic of a special ops interrogator. He forces cement down Ryan's throat, leading to his demise. The police discover Ryan's cement-encased body the following day. The case piques Holland's interest, and he senses a significant career progression opportunity. Subsequently, Terry, the pub owner, presents Holland with CCTV footage from his establishment, featuring Jimmy as he bundles an unconscious man into the back of his vehicle. Ignoring Deb's warning against disclosing the CCTV footage, Terry decides to proceed, unwilling to risk his pub suffering the same fate as George's house. Morgan provides the police with a false account about Jimmy while he takes refuge in her apartment. Later, Jimmy finds himself being tailed by 2 police officers, while he's in a store. Just as the officers prepare to apprehend him, a car pulls up abruptly. Two muscular men emerge from the vehicle and engage the police, giving Jimmy the chance to escape. Much to his surprise, Colonel Leach emerges from the car. Given Jimmy's invaluable contribution to the special ops, the colonel personally intervenes to extract him. He gives Jimmy another 48 hours to wrap up his personal vendetta, implying he needs to settle scores with the remaining gang members before resuming his official duties. Elsewhere, Griff consults with Joe, the SWAT leader, suggesting that the case should not be taken lightly. Joe, sensing something amiss, questions Griff about his knowledge of the murderer. Griff discloses the truth, revealing that he is friends with Jimmy, whose parents were tragically killed. Despite Joe's concern that Jimmy is spiraling out of control, Griff points out that Holland's ambitions are no different, and he is merely pursuing this case to secure a promotion to superintendent. This, Griff warns, will likely lead to the department's ruin due to Holland's inherent corruption and negligence. Back with Jimmy, he proceeds with his mission of retribution, buoyed by the knowledge of having military backing and the certainty of evading capture. At a strip club, Leon receives an envelope containing Ryan's photograph. Sensing imminent danger, he bolts from the club, only to be intercepted and overpowered by Jimmy. When Leon regains consciousness, he finds himself strapped to the ground, his lower body tied to a gate and his upper body secured to a car. His ignorance of his transgressions only serves to enrage Jimmy further. Consequently, Jimmy shows no mercy. He gets into the car and drives off, leaving Leon horribly mutilated. The following day, Colonel Leach encounters Holland at a restaurant. He demands that Holland surrender all police evidence gathered against Jimmy, asserting that Jimmy is a military matter, not a civilian one. Holland rebuffs his request, arguing that if the colonel decides to take the law into his own hands, he should be imprisoned. The colonel retorts by sharing a story of Jimmy's courage from a 2009 mission, where Jimmy successfully extracted critical information from a terrorist planning a massive attack on Britain. According to Leach, individuals like Jimmy don't fear death, but rather they embrace it. He concludes by asserting that Jimmy will eliminate the remaining gang members and then disappear. Holland accepts this challenge, vowing to locate Jimmy. As he leaves, Colonel Leach issues a stern warning to Holland, stating that any harm inflicted on Jimmy will be met with severe repercussions. On short notice, the police superintendent and the police commissioner convene a meeting with the head of the military. The subject of their discussion is Jimmy, who is currently under investigation. The military chief insists that under no circumstances should Jimmy be apprehended. Without revealing too much about him, they expound to the superintendents the significance of Jimmy's role in the United Kingdom's top-secret intelligence agencies. The military head mandates that the senior officials in the police department provide direct updates on the progress of this investigation. Later that night, the final surviving member of the gang responsible for the brutal murder of Jimmy's parents, Rob, is on his way to meet a dealer. Jimmy intercepts him and coerces him to knock on the door, using him as a human shield. However, Rob manages to escape. Jimmy systematically eliminates all remaining dealers associated with the gang, sparing only Caleb, Warren's business partner. He secures Caleb to a chair and begins to mix certain chemicals in a bucket, identical to those used by the dealers in their operations. He dissolves all of their ill-gotten money in the chemical mixture and pours it over Caleb, causing him to melt away. In the meantime, Holland discovers that Constable Griff has been aiding Jimmy by providing him with information right from the beginning. He confronts Griff and demands to know who Jimmy is targeting next. Griff refuses to comply and advises him to steer clear of Jimmy's path. Holland, however, seems undeterred by his superior's orders and is determined to track down Jimmy. He locates the last surviving gang member, Rob, who had fled the previous night's scene, in a hospital. Subsequently, the injured man is seen in Jimmy's apartment, going through some letters. Jimmy tracks him down and forces him to drive to the seaport. He makes Rob kneel, with his wrists bound, and brandishes a syringe filled with a highly toxic aerosol that can cause internal burning. Rob retaliates by spitting at Jimmy and advises him to inspect the trunk of his car. To his horror, Jimmy discovers that Rob has killed Morgan before he could retaliate. In his shock and exhaustion, Jimmy unloads his gun into Rob just as Holland and a SWAT team arrive at the scene. Griff also appears and confronts Holland about his decision to release Rob from the hospital, which led to the murder of Jimmy's wife. Holland defends his actions, stating he released Rob in the hope that he would lead them to Jimmy and that he had no inkling Rob would commit such an act. Upon witnessing Holland's lack of integrity, SWAT Captain Joe orders his team to stand down, leaving Holland dumbfounded. They permit Jimmy to walk away unharmed. Before departing, Jimmy lands a punch on Holland, knocking him unconscious. In an alleyway, a woman is seen disposing of her garbage when two individuals accost her and begin to harass her, ignoring her pleas for help. Jimmy appears at the opposite end of the alley and is confronted by the miscreants who demand he leave. A sinister smile forms on Jimmy's face. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.